Now let's begin. The drive from Minneapolis back to Chicago had never felt longer. James Hunt kept his foot pressed hard against the accelerator, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, replaying Carolyn Sherwood's frantic phone call in his mind. 7 hours. That's how long it would take him to get home, and every minute felt like a knife twisting in his gut. James, I don't know what to do. Your daughter, Sarah, she's sitting in your driveway. There's blood on her face, her clothes. She won't move. She won't talk. I tried calling Melissa, but she's not answering. Should I call the police? He'd told Carolyn to stay with Sarah, that he'd call Melissa himself. But Melissa hadn't answered. Not the first call. Not the 5th. Not the 20th. That's when he'd called Norma Richard, his mother-in-law, his voice shaking with panic. Oh, James. Her voice had been cold, distant. She's not our problem anymore. Those words. Those fucking words. They echoed in his head as he drove through the darkness, past endless stretches of highway. Not our problem. An 8-year-old girl, bleeding and alone in the middle of the night, and her own grandmother called her, not our problem. He'd called his younger brother Christopher next. Chris had arrived at the house within 30 minutes, and by the time James finally got him on the phone, his brother's voice was tight, controlled in a way that made James's blood run cold. I've got her, Jamie. She's safe now. She's with me. A pause. But when you get home, we need to talk. Don't call Melissa again. Don't call anyone. Just drive safe and get here. That was 2 days ago. James had been in the middle of closing a major consulting deal when Carolyn called. He'd walked out of the conference room mid-presentation, thrown his belongings in his car, and started driving. He'd only stopped for gas and coffee, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios, each one more horrifying than the last. The Chicago skyline appeared on the horizon as dawn broke on the 3rd day. James had built a good life here. At 36, he was a senior partner at Davenport & Associates, one of the city's premier business consulting firms. He'd met Melissa Richard 8 years ago at a charity gala. She was beautiful, charming, from a prominent family. They'd married quickly, and Sarah had been born a year later. The perfect life. The perfect family. Or so he'd thought. He pulled into Chris's apartment complex in Lincoln Park just after 6 in the morning. His brother was waiting outside, a coffee in each hand. Christopher Hunt was 2 years younger than James, a criminal defense attorney with a sharp mind and sharper instincts. They'd grown up in a rough neighborhood on the South Side, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep them fed. They'd learned early to watch out for each other, to trust no one else. She's still sleeping, Chris said quietly, handing James a coffee. His brother looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. She's been having nightmares. Where's Melissa? James's voice was hoarse from hours of silence. Home. Playing the worried wife, from what I can tell. Chris's jaw tightened. Jamie, we need to talk before you see Sarah. There are things you need to know. Things I found out. They sat in Chris's car, and Christopher pulled out his phone. When I picked her up that night, she wouldn't talk. Just kept crying. I took her to the emergency room. She needed stitches on her forehead and arm. The doctors asked what happened. She wouldn't say, just kept asking for you. James felt his chest constrict. What did they do to her? That's the thing. The injuries were consistent with being shoved, with hitting her head on something hard. The ER doctor noted bruising on her shoulders, like someone had grabbed her. Chris pulled up photos on his phone. I took pictures of everything. I also went back to your house that night, after Sarah was settled. I wanted to understand what the hell happened. The photos showed Sarah's small form huddled in a hospital bed, a white bandage on her forehead, her eyes red and swollen. James had to look away. I found this in the garage, Chris continued, swiping to another photo. It showed a large bloodstain on the concrete floor, drag marks leading to the driveway. And this. Another photo, a broken vase, shattered glass, more blood on the kitchen tile. The house was cleaned up by the time I got there, but they missed the garage. They missed a lot of things. Who's that? James's voice was deadly quiet. Chris met his brother's eyes. I set up cameras around your house after I left Sarah at the hospital. Small ones, hidden. I wanted to see who came and went. He pulled up a video. This was recorded at 3 a.m., the night it happened. The video showed Melissa's silver Mercedes pulling into the driveway. But Melissa wasn't alone. A man got out of the passenger's side, tall, athletic build, someone James didn't recognize. They both went inside, and 40 minutes later, they emerged carrying garbage bags. They loaded them into the man's truck and drove off. I followed them, Chris said. They dumped the bags in an industrial area near the docks. I retrieved them after they left. His expression was grim. Bloody towels. Sarah's torn clothing. Pieces of that vase. They were destroying evidence. James felt something break inside him. Who is he? His name is Frederick Drew. He's a personal trainer at Melissa's gym. I did some digging. He's got a record. Assault charges from 5 years ago, dropped when the victim refused to testify. Another charge for intimidation. He's not a good guy, Jamie. How long has this been going on? Best I can tell, about 6 months. I found hotel receipts, text messages. Melissa's been sloppy. But that's not the worst part. Chris's voice dropped. I talked to Norma yesterday. Confronted her. She knew, Jamie. She's known about the affair from the start. She actually encouraged it. James stared at his brother. What? Norma never thought you were good enough for Melissa. You know that. You came from nothing, worked your way up. Melissa was supposed to marry old money, someone from her social circle. Norma's been waiting for this marriage to fail. Chris's hands clenched. When I confronted her, she laughed. Said Melissa deserved better than a self-made man who's never home. The pieces were starting to come together, but James still didn't understand the most important part. What happened that night? Why was Sarah outside bleeding? Chris took a deep breath. I think Sarah walked in on something. Maybe she woke up, heard noises, came downstairs. From what I've been able to piece together, and Sarah hasn't talked much, but she said a few things. She saw Frederick hitting Melissa. She tried to stop him. He hurt my daughter. It wasn't a question. He shoved her. She hit her head on the kitchen counter, fell into the vase. Started bleeding pretty badly. Chris's voice shook with rage. And instead of calling 911, instead of helping her own child, Melissa made a choice. She chose him. She and Frederick cleaned up the scene, and they put Sarah outside. Left her there. Told her that if she said anything, she'd be taken away, that you'd never see her again. James couldn't breathe. The world had narrowed to a single point of white-hot fury. Sarah sat out there for 5 hours before Carolyn noticed her. 5 hours, Jamie. She was terrified, in pain, traumatized. And her own mother. Chris couldn't finish. Where's Melissa now? James's voice was unnaturally calm. Home. I've been watching the house. Frederick's there too. They've been acting like nothing happened, waiting for you to come back so Melissa can play the concerned wife. Chris pulled out a thick folder. I've documented everything. Every piece of evidence. I know you're angry. I'm angry too. But we need to be smart about this. James opened the folder. Inside were photos, videos, phone records, financial statements showing hotel charges and cash withdrawals. Text messages between Melissa and Frederick. Messages between Melissa and Norma discussing the affair, discussing James, discussing their plans. It was all there. A complete picture of betrayal. But there was something else. Bank statements showing large transfers from Melissa's account to Frederick's. Titles to a condo purchased in Frederick's name. Melissa wasn't just having an affair. She was financing Frederick's life, using James's money to do it. There's more, Chris said quietly. I found insurance documents. Melissa increased your life insurance policy 3 months ago. $2 million, with her as the sole beneficiary. The implication hung in the air between them. She was planning something, James said. Maybe. Or maybe she just wanted a safety net for when she left you. Either way, Chris stopped. I think you need to see Sarah now. She's been asking for you. They went upstairs to Chris's apartment. Sarah was awake, sitting on the couch in pajamas that were too big for her, holding a stuffed bear that Chris must have bought her. When she saw James, her face crumpled. Daddy. He was across the room in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms, careful of her injuries. She was so small, so fragile. The bandage on her forehead stood out starkly against her pale skin. I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry, she sobbed into his shoulder. Sho, baby. You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. He held her tight, feeling her shake. I'm here now. I'm here, and I'm never leaving you again. She pulled back to look at him, her eyes, his eyes, the same dark brown, filled with tears. Mommy said you wouldn't want me anymore. She said I was bad. She said, your mother lied. James's voice was steel. You're not bad. You're the bravest, strongest girl I know. And I will always, always want you. Do you understand me? Sarah nodded, burying her face against his chest again. Over her head, James met Chris's eyes. His brother's expression was grim but determined. James had built his career on solving problems, on finding weaknesses in systems and exploiting them, on understanding human nature and using it to his advantage. He'd advise companies on how to outmaneuver their competitors, how to turn disasters into opportunities. Now he was going to use every skill he'd learned, every connection he'd made, every ruthless instinct he'd suppressed in the name of civility, to destroy the people who had hurt his daughter. Melissa wanted to play games. Norma thought he wasn't good enough. Frederick thought he could put his hands on an 8-year-old child and walk away. They were about to learn what happened when you backed a self-made man into a corner. They were about to learn that some men, when you take everything from them, have nothing left to lose. And James Hunt had nothing left to lose except Sarah. He was going to make them pay. Every single one of them. But first, he needed to understand the full scope of what he was dealing with. He needed to go home. Can you keep her a little longer? James asked Chris, stroking Sarah's hair. Just for today. Of course. Chris understood. What are you going to do? I'm going to talk to my wife, James said quietly. And then I'm going to start building a case. Jamie, Chris's voice held a warning. Whatever you're planning, be careful. These people are dangerous. James looked down at his daughter, at the bandage on her forehead, at the fear still lingering in her eyes. So am I, he said. The house in Oak Park looked exactly as it always had. Pristine, expensive, perfect. James sat in his car across the street for a moment, studying it. He'd bought this house with the first big bonus from Davenport and Associates. Melissa had decorated it, filled it with expensive furniture and art. It had never felt like home, he realized now. It had felt like a showpiece. He checked his phone. Chris had sent him a text. Cameras are still active. I can see everything. Be safe. James had prepared for this moment during the drive. He'd showered at Chris's apartment, changed into a fresh suit. He looked exactly like the James Hunt who had left for Minneapolis 3 days ago, calm, professional, in control. But inside, he was someone different now. Inside, he was calculating every move, planning every word. He walked up to the front door and used his key. The house was quiet. He could hear voices from upstairs, Melissa's voice, and a man's laugh. They didn't even have the decency to hide it. James set down his briefcase and walked up the stairs. The bedroom door was open. Melissa was there, wearing one of James's own dress shirts, her hair tousled. Frederick Drew was lying on James's bed, shirtless, completely comfortable. They both froze when they saw him. James. Melissa's hand flew to her throat. You're home early. He looked at her. Really looked at her. She was beautiful, blonde, blue-eyed, the kind of woman who turned heads. But now all he saw was the person who had left their daughter bleeding in the driveway. The person who had chosen this man over their own child. Where's Sarah? He asked, his voice conversational. Melissa's eyes darted to Frederick, then back to James. She's at my mother's. No, she's not. James leaned against the doorframe, completely relaxed. I just spoke to Norma. She said Sarah's not her problem. Interesting choice of words, don't you think? Frederick sat up, his expression hardening. Look, man, maybe you should. I wasn't talking to you, James said, his eyes never leaving Melissa. In fact, I don't even know who you are. Should I? The lie was calculated. He watched Melissa's face, watched her try to figure out what he knew, what he didn't know. This is Frederick, she said finally. He's a friend. A friend. James nodded slowly. And does your friend make a habit of sleeping in other men's beds? James, please. Let me explain. I don't need you to explain. I need you to tell me what happened to our daughter 3 nights ago. The color drained from Melissa's face. What do you mean? Sarah, our 8-year-old daughter. Someone hurt her. Someone left her sitting outside in the middle of the night, bleeding. I want to know what happened. Frederick stood up, reaching for his shirt. I think I should go. Sit down. James's voice cracked like a whip. Frederick actually flinched. You're not going anywhere until I get answers. You can't tell me what to do in my own, Frederick started. Your own what? James smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. This isn't your house. This is my house. That's my bed you were fucking my wife in. And you. He pointed at Frederick. You put your hands on my daughter. The room went silent. I don't know what you think happened, Melissa said, her voice shaking. But you're wrong. Sarah just fell. Don't. James's voice was quiet, but something in it made Melissa stop. Don't insult my intelligence. I know what happened. I know everything. He could see the panic in her eyes, the way she looked at Frederick for support. I think we need to call a lawyer, Frederick said. Oh, we'll definitely be calling lawyers, James agreed. Among other people. But first, I want to hear it from you, Melissa. I want to hear you say what you did to our daughter. Melissa's facade crumbled. Tears started flowing, and James realized with disgust that they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity. It was an accident, she sobbed. Sarah came downstairs. She saw us. She started screaming. Frederick tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't listen. She attacked him, and he just pushed her away. She fell. It was an accident. And then what? James's voice was ice. She was bleeding. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. So you put her outside. James stated it flatly. You cleaned up the blood, packed up the evidence, and you left your 8-year-old daughter sitting in the driveway for 5 hours. I was going to call you. But you didn't. You didn't call me. You didn't call 911. You didn't even call your mother for help. No. Wait. You did call Norma. And she told you to handle it yourself, didn't she? She told you to get rid of the evidence. Melissa's silence was confirmation. I want you both out of this house, James said. Now. This is my house too. Melissa's tears turned to anger. You can't just throw me out. Watch me. James pulled out his phone. I can have the police here in 5 minutes. I have evidence of child endangerment, evidence of assault on a minor. I have photos, videos, witnesses. So you can leave quietly, or you can leave in handcuffs. Your choice. Frederick grabbed his clothes, moving toward the door. Melissa caught his arm. Wait. You can't just leave me. I'm not going to jail for your kid, Frederick said, shaking her off. The mask dropped completely. Melissa's beautiful face twisted with rage. You don't understand. You've never understood. I gave up everything for you. My career, my life. I was supposed to marry someone important, someone from my world. But my father liked you, thought you had potential. Do you know what it's been like, watching you succeed while I'm stuck playing housewife? Watching you travel the country while I'm trapped here. So you had an affair. James's voice was flat. Fine. I could have lived with that. We could have gotten a divorce, shared custody. But you hurt Sarah. You left her bleeding and terrified because you were more worried about protecting him. He gestured at Frederick. Than protecting your own child. She was ruining everything. Melissa screamed. She was always ruining everything. Always needing attention. Always interrupting. Always. James held up his hand. He'd heard enough. Get out. Both of you. Now. What about my things? Melissa started. You can have a lawyer arranged to pick them up. Get out. Frederick was already halfway down the stairs. Melissa lingered, looking around the bedroom as if seeing it for the last time. You'll regret this, she said. My family has lawyers. Good lawyers. You'll never see Sarah again. Is that a threat? It's a promise. She grabbed a coat and purse. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of father leaves his daughter alone for days while he's off on business trips. I'll make sure the courts know that Sarah wasn't safe with you. She left, slamming the door behind her. James stood alone in the bedroom, his hands shaking. He pulled out his phone and called Chris. Did you get all that? He asked. Every word, Chris confirmed. The cameras caught it all. Her admission, the threats, everything. Good. James sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. Chris, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to find out everything about Frederick Drew. Everything. I want to know where he works, where he lives, who his friends are, what he's been doing for the last 6 months. I want to know his weaknesses. Already on it, Chris said. I've got a private investigator I trust. He's good, discreet. And Melissa, I need to know about her too. Bank accounts, credit cards, everywhere she's been. I want a complete picture. Jamie, what are you planning? James looked around the bedroom, at the life he'd built that had turned out to be a lie. I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve, he said. But I need to do this right. I need to do this in a way that protects Sarah, that makes sure they can never hurt her again. We'll be smart about this, Chris promised. We'll build an airtight case. After hanging up, James walked through the house, seeing it with new eyes. He stopped in Sarah's room. It was pink and white, filled with toys and books. Her bed was neatly made. There was a photo on her nightstand, Sarah and James at the zoo, both of them grinning at the camera. Melissa wasn't in the photo. She rarely was. He picked up the frame, studying Sarah's happy face. That little girl deserved better. She deserved a father who protected her, who fought for her, who made sure that the people who hurt her faced consequences. James had spent his entire career being measured, being diplomatic, playing by the rules. He'd clawed his way up from nothing by being smarter than everyone else, by outthinking his opponents. Now he was going to use those skills for something that mattered. He was going to destroy Melissa, Frederick, and Norma. Not quickly, not simply. He was going to dismantle their lives piece by piece, the way they had tried to dismantle his daughter's sense of safety. And he was going to make sure they knew exactly who was doing it to them. James Hunt had learned a long time ago that revenge was a dish best served cold. He'd also learned that the best revenge was the kind where your enemies destroyed themselves. He just needed to set the dominoes in motion. And he had all the time in the world. 1 week later, James sat in his attorney's office. He'd hired Kenneth Whitney, one of Chicago's best family law attorneys, known for being aggressive and relentless. Whitney was in his 50s, gray-haired, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "I've reviewed everything your brother provided," Whitney said, tapping the thick folder on his desk. "The evidence is solid. We can file for emergency custody based on child endangerment. We'll get it." "What about criminal charges?" James asked. "That's trickier. The DA would need Sarah to testify, and given her age and trauma, they might be reluctant. But with the physical evidence, the hospital records, the videos of Melissa and Drew destroying evidence, we can push for it." "Do it," James said. "I want charges filed against both of them." Whitney nodded. "Understood. Now, there's something else. Your wife's attorney called me this morning. Melissa is claiming that you were an absent father, that your work trips left Sarah vulnerable, that the injury happened while you were gone, and therefore you share culpability. That's insane. It's also predictable. They're going to try to muddy the waters, make this about your parenting too." Whitney leaned back. "But we have documentation of every text message you sent home, every call. We have testimony from teachers, neighbors, Sarah's pediatrician. Everyone says you're an engaged, loving father. Melissa doesn't have a leg to stand on." "What about Norma Richard? What about her?" "She was complicit. She knew about the affair, encouraged it. When I called her for help that night, she refused. I want her held accountable too." Whitney frowned. "That's harder. She didn't directly harm Sarah. She's just a terrible grandmother. There has to be something." James leaned forward. "Chris has evidence that Norma helped Melissa hide the affair, that she's been funneling money to Melissa for months. Norma's been embezzling. Wait, no." He stopped himself. He'd told Chris he didn't want typical plots. "She's been doing something. I just need to figure out what." "I'll look into it," Whitney promised. "But our priority is Sarah's custody and safety. Everything else is secondary." James knew Whitney was right, but it wasn't enough. Legal consequences weren't enough. He wanted Melissa, Frederick, and Norma to feel the same fear, the same helplessness that Sarah had felt sitting alone in that driveway. After leaving Whitney's office, James met Chris at a coffee shop near the courthouse. "I've got news," Chris said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "Frederick Drew is more interesting than we thought." James opened the envelope. Inside were bank statements, photos, and what looked like police reports. "Frederick's been running a long con," Chris explained. "He targets wealthy women at the gym where he works, or worked. He got fired 2 days ago. Apparently, the owner found out he was sleeping with half the female clients. Let me guess, married women. Exclusively. He gets them hooked, has affairs, gets them to pay for things. Sometimes he blackmails them. One woman paid him $50,000 to keep quiet about their affair." Chris tapped one of the photos. "That's his real source of income. The personal training is just access." James studied the information. Melissa's been paying him. More than you'd think. In the last 6 months, she's transferred over $200,000 to accounts he controls. She bought him a car, a condo. She's been bankrupting your joint accounts. "How is that possible?" "I monitor our finances. She opened new credit cards in your name. Took out a home equity loan. She's been very busy." Chris's expression was grim. "She's in debt up to her eyeballs, Jamie. And now that Frederick's lost his job, his income stream is gone." James saw the angle immediately. "They need money. That's why she increased my life insurance." "That's my thinking too." Chris paused. "There's more. I found text messages between Melissa and Frederick from 2 weeks ago. They're discussing handling the James problem. It's not explicit, but the implications are pretty clear. They were planning something." James felt cold. Maybe. Or maybe they were just fantasizing. Either way, it shows intent. Chris pulled out his phone. "And here's the kicker. Frederick has a contact, someone he's worked with before. A guy named Ronnie Wolf. Wolf's been in and out of prison for assault, extortion, He and Frederick did time together about 8 years ago. What kind of contact? The kind you hire when you need someone to disappear. James absorbed this. The picture was getting clearer. Melissa hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been planning to leave him, probably take Sarah, and clean him out financially. When Sarah had become a complication, when she'd witnessed Frederick's violence, they'd improvised. Badly. But what if Sarah had fought harder? What if she'd called the police? What if? James forced himself to stop. Sarah was safe. That's what mattered. We need to flip this, he said. Flip what? Everything. They thought they were so smart, so careful. But they left evidence everywhere. They got sloppy. We used that. Chris leaned back. What are you thinking? Melissa and Frederick need money. They're desperate. Frederick just lost his job. Melissa's cut off from our accounts. They're going to do something stupid. James smiled. We just need to make sure they do it in a way that destroys them. That's playing with fire. I know. James met his brother's eyes. But I'm done playing it safe. These people hurt my daughter. They were planning to hurt me. And they almost got away with it. He gestured to the envelope. We have evidence of fraud, endangerment, possibly conspiracy to commit murder. But that's not enough. I want them to lose everything. I want Frederick in prison. I want Melissa destroyed. I want Norma to watch her daughter fall and know she helped cause it. Chris was quiet for a long moment. Okay, he said finally. I'm in. What's the plan? James pulled out a notebook. He'd been sketching ideas, angles, possibilities. First, we let them think they're winning. Whitney files for custody, but we make it look like a standard divorce. We don't mention the criminal charges yet. We let Melissa think she can fight me. Why? Because desperate people make mistakes. Melissa will reach out to Frederick for support. They'll make plans. And we'll be watching every move. James tapped the notebook. Second, we cut off their money. I've already frozen our joint accounts. I've canceled the credit cards. Melissa has no access to funds except what she had in her personal account, which according to your investigation is almost nothing. She'll go to Norma. Exactly. And that's when we start learning about Norma's involvement. Money leaves a trail. Chris nodded slowly. And Frederick? Frederick's the key. He's the weak link. He's got a record. He just lost his job, and his cash cow, Melissa, is broke. He's going to panic. James pulled out another document. I did some research. Frederick's on probation for those assault charges. Any new arrest, any violation, and he goes straight to prison. No bail. So we get him arrested. We get him to violate his probation in a way that's undeniable. But not yet. First we watch. We document. We build an airtight case. And then, James smiled. We give them enough rope to hang themselves. Chris studied his brother. You've changed. No, James said quietly. I've just remembered who I used to be. Before I started caring about being respectable, they spent the next 3 hours planning. Chris had resources, investigators, contacts in law enforcement, people who owed him favors. James had money and access to information through his business network. Together, they started building a web. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. They would monitor Melissa and Frederick, document every move, every conversation. They would track Norma's involvement. And they would wait for the inevitable moment when Frederick's need for money, Melissa's desperation, and Norma's arrogance led them to do something that couldn't be walked back. James wasn't just planning to win custody of Sarah. He was planning to ensure that Melissa lost everything: her reputation, her money, her freedom. He was planning to send Frederick to prison for a very long time. And he was planning to expose Norma in a way that would destroy her standing in Chicago's social circles. It was ruthless. It was calculated. And it was exactly what they deserved. When do we start? Chris asked. We already have, James said. Melissa doesn't know it yet, but she's already lost. 2 weeks into the surveillance, the picture became even more damning. Chris's investigator, a former FBI agent named Leo Connor, had proven worth every penny. He'd placed listening devices in Frederick's condo, tracked Melissa's movements, and monitored all their communications. James and Chris sat in Chris's apartment, listening to recordings, watching videos. Sarah was at school. James had enrolled her in a new private school closer to Chris's place, somewhere Melissa didn't know about. She was starting to smile again, starting to sleep through the night. Listen to this, Leo said, playing a recording from 2 days ago. It was Melissa and Frederick in his condo. Can't keep living like this, Frederick's voice said. I've got rent due bills. Your husband cut you off. He's not my husband anymore. Or he won't be soon. Melissa sounded bitter. My lawyer says he's going for full custody. He's claiming I'm an unfit mother. Aren't you? Frederick laughed, but it wasn't kind. Fuck you. This is your fault. If you hadn't lost your temper with Sarah. She attacked me. She's 8 years old. There was a pause, then the sound of something breaking. Don't you ever raise your voice to me, Frederick said, his voice cold. You don't scare me. I should. Remember what happened to Sarah when she got in my way. Another pause. Then Melissa, quietly. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you that you're as deep in this as I am. You cleaned up the scene. You moved the evidence. You're an accessory. Frederick's voice turned smooth, almost gentle. But I don't want to fight, baby. I want us to be together. We just need money. Your mother. My mother cut me off too. She says I embarrassed her, that I should have been more careful. Then we need another source of income. Papers rustling. What about James's life insurance? What about it? You increased it, right? 2 million. So if something happened to James, you'd have enough money for both of us. We could disappear, start over somewhere new. Melissa's laugh was shaky. You can't be serious. Why not? He's going to take everything from you anyway. Your daughter, your home, your money. Don't you want revenge? Frederick, that's crazy. We can't. I mean, how would we even? I know people. People who can make things look like accidents. The recording continued, but James had heard enough. He looked at Chris and Leo. That's conspiracy to commit murder, Chris said. We've got them. Not yet, James said. That's talk. Speculation. A good lawyer could argue it's just venting, just anger. We need more. More than a recording of them discussing killing you. Leo raised an eyebrow. I need them to act on it. I need them to make contact with this person Frederick knows. I need evidence of an actual plan, money changing hands, concrete steps. James stood, pacing. If we move now, they might get a plea deal. Melissa might get probation. Frederick might get a few years. That's not justice. Jamie, they're talking about killing you, Chris said. Maybe we should bring in the police now, get protective custody. I'm not hiding from them. James's voice was steel. I'm going to give them exactly what they want. A chance to come after me. And when they do, when they've committed to it, when there's no way out, that's when we spring the trap. Leo looked at Chris. Your brother's either very brave or very stupid. Both, Chris said. Runs in the family. Over the next week, they let Melissa and Frederick believe their plan was working. James made a show of being distracted, vulnerable. He went to work, came home late, followed predictable patterns. He made it easy, and he wore a wire. Every second of every day. The breakthrough came on a Thursday. Leo called James at work, his voice urgent. Frederick just made contact, Leo said. He called Ronnie Wolf. They're meeting tonight at a bar in Cicero. I've got eyes on the location. I'm coming, James said. Bad idea. If Wolf sees you. He won't. I'll stay in the car with you. I just need to hear this. That night, James sat in a nondescript van half a block from a dingy bar called Lucky's. Leo had microphones pointed at the outdoor patio where Frederick and Ronnie Wolf were sitting. Wolf was exactly what James had expected, muscular, tattooed, dead-eyed. The kind of man who hurt people for money and slept fine at night. Simple job, Frederick was saying. Guy's got a routine. Every Wednesday, he works late, drives home through Lincoln Park. Quiet street, not many cameras. And the pay? Wolf's voice was gravelly. $25,000 up front. Another 25 when it's done. 50 grand to take out some business guy? Wolf sounded skeptical. What's the catch? No catch. Just needs to look like a robbery. Random violence. You know the drill. And who's paying? Does it matter? It does if the cops come looking. Wolf leaned back. I don't like sloppy work, Drew. You reek of sloppy. The money's good. Clean. Can't be traced. Wolf was quiet for a moment. I want 30 up front. I don't have 30. Then we don't have a deal. Wolf stood. Wait. Frederick grabbed his arm. I can get it. Just give me a few days. You've got until Monday. Bring cash to this location. Wolf slid a piece of paper across the table. And Drew? If this goes sideways, if the cops show up, I'm giving them your name first. Clear. Crystal. Wolf left. Frederick sat alone for a moment, then pulled out his phone. In the van, James listened as Frederick called Melissa. We need 30,000 by Monday, Frederick said without preamble. I don't have 30,000. Then get it. Sell something. I don't care. This has to happen, Melissa. If we don't do this now, James is going to take everything. My mother. Ask your mother. Tell her it's an emergency. Tell her whatever you need to tell her." Melissa hung up. James looked at Leo. "That's enough for an arrest, right?" Leo asked. "It's enough for Frederick," James confirmed. "But I want Melissa and Norma too. I want all three of them." "We keep watching," Chris said from the back of the van. He'd been silent, listening. "We see if Melissa goes to Norma. We see if Norma provides the money. And if she does, then Norma's an accessory to conspiracy to commit murder," Chris said. "She goes down with them." They didn't have to wait long. The next morning, Leo's team caught Melissa visiting Norma's penthouse apartment in the Gold Coast. The penthouse had been Norma's home since her husband died 5 years ago, a monument to old money and social status. Leo had managed to get a listening device in the building's lobby, close enough to catch the elevator conversation. "Absolutely desperate," Melissa was saying. "If I don't get 30,000 by Monday, Frederick says everything falls apart." "Frederick says." Norma's voice dripped with disdain. "You've let this man control you, drain your accounts, ruin your marriage. And now you expect me to pay for his mistakes. Mother, please. If James gets full custody, you should have thought of that before you left Sarah bleeding in the driveway." Silence. Then Melissa, crying. "That was an accident. You know it was an accident. It was negligence. It was putting that man before your own child." Norma sighed. "But I suppose I'm complicit in this disaster too. I encouraged your affair. I thought Frederick was just a distraction, something to make James jealous enough to improve himself. I never expected you to fall for him. I love him." "Love?" Norma laughed bitterly. "You've bankrupted yourself for love. Well, I won't let you lose Sarah. She's my granddaughter, and I won't have her raised by a man from the South Side. So you'll help?" A long pause. "I'll give you the money. But this is the last time, Melissa. Whatever Frederick's planning with this money, it better work. Because I'm done bailing you out." "Thank you, Mother. Thank you." James turned off the recording. They had it. All of it. Conspiracy to commit murder, with all three of them involved. Norma was knowingly providing funds for a hit. Melissa was coordinating it. Frederick was arranging it. The trap was set. "We call the police now," Chris said. "Not yet." James pulled out his phone. "First, I'm going to make sure they can't claim they didn't know what the money was for. I'm going to make them be explicit." He composed a text message to Melissa from an unknown number. "I know what you're planning. Stop now, or you'll regret it." The response came within minutes. "Who is this?" James typed. "Someone who knows about Frederick and Ronnie Wolf. Someone who knows about Wednesday night. Walk away, Melissa, while you still can." His phone rang immediately. Melissa, calling the unknown number. James didn't answer. He wanted her panicked, scared, making mistakes. She called 4 more times. Then she called Frederick. Leo's devices picked up the conversation. "Someone knows," Melissa said, her voice shaking. "Someone sent me a text. They know about Wolf. They know about Wednesday." "Calm down," Frederick said. "It's probably just someone fishing. Ignore it. What if it's James? What if he knows? How could he know? We've been careful." "Frederick, I'm scared. Maybe we should call this off." "Call it off." Frederick's voice turned hard. "Your mother just gave us $30,000 to have your husband killed, and you want to call it off? Do you know what happens if we don't go through with this? If James takes you to court, you'll lose Sarah. You'll lose everything. And I'll make sure everyone knows you were planning to have him murdered. Are you blackmailing me? I'm making sure you understand what's at stake. We're in this together, Melissa. All the way." She was crying now. Okay, we'll do it. Good. I'm meeting Wolf Monday morning. By Wednesday night, this will all be over." James hung up the recording and looked at Chris and Leo. "Now we call the police." Monday morning came cold and clear. James sat in a conference room at the Chicago Police Department with Chris, Leo, Kenneth Whitney, and Detective Austin Villanueva from the Organized Crime Unit. "We've been monitoring Frederick Drew for 2 weeks, Villanueva said, reviewing the files. "Thanks to your evidence, we have enough for conspiracy charges against all 3 suspects." "What's the plan?" James asked. "We arrest Drew when he meets Ronnie Wolf. We've got Wolf in our sights. He's wanted for questioning on another case anyway. We'll take him down at the same time." Villanueva looked up. "Then we pick up Melissa Hunt and Norma Richard. With the recordings, the text messages, the money trail, we've got them cold." "What about Sarah?" James asked. "I don't want her hearing about this from the news." "We'll time the arrest for when she's in school," Whitney said. "And I've already filed for emergency custody. Once Melissa's arrested, you'll have full legal custody." "What are the charges?" Chris asked. Conspiracy to commit murder for all three. Add financial fraud, child endangerment, and evidence tampering for Melissa. Drew's also looking at assault on a minor, parole violation. Villanueva smiled. They're going away for a long time. James felt something loosen in his chest. Justice. Real justice. There's one more thing, Villanueva said. We need you to stay safe until this is done. Drew and Wolf might move up their timeline if they get spooked. I can protect myself. I don't doubt it. But humor us. Stay with your brother until Wednesday. After we make the arrests, you're free. James agreed. 2 more days. He could wait 2 more days. That afternoon, he picked Sarah up from school. She'd been staying with Chris, but James took her for ice cream. Just the two of them. Are you and Mommy getting divorced? She asked, chocolate ice cream on her chin. James wiped it off gently. Yes, sweetheart. We are. Is it because of me? Because of what happened? No. He took her small hand in his. It's because Mommy made some bad choices. Choices that have nothing to do with you. You didn't do anything wrong. Will I still see her? James hesitated. How did you tell an 8-year-old that her mother was going to prison? That's going to be up to the court. But you'll be living with me. Is that okay? Sarah nodded, her eyes welling up. I want to stay with you, Daddy. I don't want to go back to that house. You never have to go back there. I promise. They finished their ice cream in silence. Then Sarah asked, what about Uncle Chris? Can we still see him? Of course. Uncle Chris isn't going anywhere. She smiled. Good. He makes funny pancakes. James laughed despite everything. He does, doesn't he? On Monday night, Frederick Drew met Ronnie Wolf at a parking garage in Pilsen. They were both arrested on the spot. The police found $30,000 in cash in Frederick's car, along with photos of James, his work schedule, and a map of his neighborhood. Melissa was arrested at her mother's penthouse on Tuesday morning. Norma was arrested at the same time. Both women were denied bail. Flight risk, Villanueva had argued successfully. James watched the news that night with Chris and Sarah. The story was everywhere. Socialite, mother plot to murder husband. Photos of Melissa in handcuffs, looking shocked and disheveled. Frederick being led into the police station, his face hard and defiant. Norma Richard, dignified even in custody, refusing to comment. Is that Mommy? Sarah asked quietly. Yes, James said. Is she going to jail? Probably. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then, good. James pulled her close. She was so young, too young to have learned that people you love can hurt you. But she was also resilient, stronger than he'd given her credit for. It's over now, he told her. All of it. You're safe. She fell asleep on his lap that night, holding on to him like he might disappear. The trial took 6 months. James sat through every day of it, watching as the prosecution dismantled Melissa's, Frederick's, and Norma's defenses piece by piece. The evidence was overwhelming. Recordings, text messages, financial records, witness testimony. Chris had been meticulous, and it showed. Frederick's lawyer tried to argue entrapment, but the judge shot it down. No law enforcement had encouraged the conspiracy. Frederick had initiated contact with Ronnie Wolf entirely on his own. Melissa's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of Frederick's manipulation, but the recordings showed her actively participating, coordinating, even encouraging the plan. Norma's lawyer argued she didn't know what the money was for, but the elevator recording destroyed that defense. She'd known exactly what she was funding. Ronnie Wolf turned state's evidence, testifying against all three in exchange for a reduced sentence. He described in detail how Frederick had approached him, what Frederick had wanted, how much he'd been offered. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Frederick Drew was sentenced to 25 years to life. With his prior convictions and the assault on Sarah, the judge showed no mercy. Melissa was sentenced to 15 years. She'd cooperated more than Frederick, shown remorse, though James knew it was calculated. She'd also avoided the worst charges by taking a plea deal. Norma Richard, as the financier, received 10 years. She was 72. She'd likely die in prison. James felt nothing watching them being led away. No satisfaction, no triumph. Just a cold certainty that they'd gotten what they deserved. Afterward, Kenneth Whitney pulled James aside. That's it, Whitney said. You have full permanent custody. Melissa's parental rights have been terminated. When she gets out, if she gets out, she'll have no legal claim to Sarah. Thank you, James said. Thank me by being the father that little girl deserves. James thought of Sarah, waiting at Chris's apartment, Probably doing homework or reading. She'd started therapy, started healing. She'd stopped having nightmares last month. I will, he promised. 1 year later, James stood in the backyard of his new house in Evanston, watching Sarah play with the neighbor's dog. She was laughing, her hair flying behind her, no more shadows in her eyes. Chris was manning the grill, burning burgers with his usual lack of culinary skill. You should stick to lawyering, James called over. And you should stick to whatever it is you do, Chris shot back. Make PowerPoints or something. Sarah ran over, breathless. Daddy, can we get a dog? James pretended to consider it. Maybe. What kind? A big one. Like that one. She pointed at the neighbor's golden retriever. We'll see, James said, which was parent code for probably yes. She grinned and ran off again. Chris joined James, carrying 2 beers. She's doing good. She is. James took the beer. Thanks to you. I didn't do anything. You did everything. You saved her. You helped me save her. James clinked his beer against Chris's. I couldn't have done this without you. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Sarah play. Do you ever think about them? Chris asked. Melissa, Frederick, Norma? No, James said honestly. They don't deserve my thoughts. Fair enough. Chris took a swig of beer. What about work? You thinking about going back? James had taken a year off from Davenport and Associates. The firm had been understanding, given the circumstances. But he'd realized during his time away that he didn't want to go back. He didn't want to spend his life traveling, missing Sarah growing up. I'm starting my own consultancy, James said. Working from home, choosing my own clients. I want to be here for Sarah. I want to be the father I should have been all along. You were always a good father. I was an absent father. I let my work take priority. I trusted Melissa to handle everything at home. I missed the signs. James shook his head. Never again. You can't blame yourself for what happened. I don't. I blame Melissa. I blame Frederick. I blame Norma. But I also learned from it. I learned what matters. Sarah ran over again, tugging on his sleeve. Daddy, Uncle Chris's burgers are on fire. They both turned to see smoke billowing from the grill. Damn it. Chris ran over, trying to salvage dinner. Sarah giggled. Can we order pizza instead? Absolutely, James said. That night, after pizza and ice cream and a movie, James tucked Sarah into bed. Daddy, she said sleepily. I'm happy we moved here. Me too, sweetheart. And I'm happy Uncle Chris visits so much. Even though he burns burgers? She smiled. Especially because he burns burgers. James kissed her forehead. Sweet dreams, Sarah. Daddy? I love you. I love you too. More than anything in the world. He turned off the light and stood in the doorway, watching her drift off to sleep. This little girl, who'd been through so much, who'd survived the worst kind of betrayal, who was somehow still able to laugh and play and love. She was his whole world now. Melissa had been right about one thing. James had given up a lot for his career. He'd missed school plays and parent-teacher conferences. He'd been absent more than present. But that was over now. He'd burned his old life to the ground and built something new from the ashes. Something better. Something real. And if the people who'd tried to destroy his daughter spent the rest of their lives paying for it, well, that was just justice. James walked downstairs to where Chris was cleaning up the kitchen. She asleep? Chris asked. Out like a light. Good. Chris dried his hands. I should get going. Chris. James stopped his brother. Thank you. For everything. I mean it. Chris smiled. That's what family does. We protect each other. After Chris left, James sat alone in the living room, looking at photos Sarah had drawn and taped to the walls. Pictures of their new house, of her new school, of her and James and Chris. A new life, captured in crayon. His phone buzzed. A text from Kenneth Whitney. Melissa filed an appeal. It was denied. Thought you'd want to know. James deleted the message. He didn't need updates about Melissa. She was part of a past he'd left behind. He turned off his phone and went to bed, knowing that tomorrow he'd wake up in a house without fear, without deception, without lies. Tomorrow he'd make Sarah pancakes, better than Chris's, he hoped. Tomorrow he'd take her to the park and her therapy appointment, and maybe look at puppies at the shelter. Tomorrow, and every day after, he'd be the father she deserved. And that was victory enough.